Hi folks, in this lesson I'm going to take the book code from chapter 17 and turn it into a responsive site. We'll focus on a mobile first approach. When we look at this, we see three columns and we see a navigation. So what we can do is take this column and then this text, then this column and this text, and then this at the end. So what we can do is write media queries to handle each of our initiatives, okay? So what I'm going to do first is, this is the CSS for that section, okay? And when I see something like this section, I'm assuming they're floated left. And our first goal when converting a site to be responsive is to take these values and not float them anymore, okay? So now you see I unclicked float left here, and that immediately made the page float, or it removed the float. So now I can start focusing on all the sections that I want to be responsive, okay? And I might see something like an article that has clear both, which is good, that's what we want, but we want to see the values of each and every column. So when we look at section class courses like this, and maybe we see the wrapper, and the wrapper has a width of 940, well, what we can do is have a wrapper with a width that's much smaller. Watch what happens if I do 400 pixels. What happens is the wrap, which has the border and the margin and all that stuff, quickly collapses, all right? So what if we did something like this wrapper to be this big? That looks awfully mobile, right? We're heading in the right direction. All we need to do is make sure that everything that is floated left is not floated left. So let's go back to our CSS, okay? I'm going to go ahead and look for a float left, and I see that I'm going to actually do just a comment around those. Actually, I can do float none. That would be another way to do it. And the pixels here, the width, it's fine that we float none, and I could change the pixels, but I want this to be good on desktop. So what I'm going to do is create a media query for it, okay? So let's say we wanted just to hit mobile, something like portrait, okay? I've got my first media query where it says only screen and the max width is 600. Well, 600 is fine for that. I see that the width of that float none is 659, so let's make a fixed width that possibly is 400. Something like that, 400 pixels. Okay. Now ordinarily we do percents, which we'll get into. But right now, what I would do is do the same exact selector that worked on this section. So I would do selection courses, and we'll copy it, and I'll do it right here. And I have 400 pixels. And now my code is going to be a little bit different. Let me go ahead with this, and I'm going to go ahead and refresh. And we're looking a little bit better. The courses itself have a width here, but when we go to responsive, once we hit that 600 pixel width, the width should change. So right now we're here in this section. Okay? So now we're looking a little better. There we go. You see right where the snap happened. That's where the max width is 600. And at this point, we're looking a lot more credible as far as our values. Now when I want to see something, obviously I need to add some padding. But let's go with, I'm going to go with an iPhone 10. And we see that in portrait is 375. We'll go at 100% so we can see the iPhone 10. And this is what we get. We get that value. So what we can do is reduce. Because this is 812 right now, we're going to go back and make sure that 375 is good enough for our section. So you can see this wrapping underneath, and if I were to inspect right now, I should see my I should see my select courses. There it is right here. Excuse me one second. Here's my element. So right here is select courses, right? Now what if we hit refresh on this? We want to make sure that our media query is hitting. So there's the wrapper right there. And you see the wrap is at 400. Okay? So the wrap can be something like width 100%. Or even like 90%, and we'll center it. But there we go. So we want, because it's 100% of the parent element, we'll do 400 pixels just for now, just to give the idea of how to do the one column layout. So now I have this, and I still have to center some things. The padding's going to need to be added inside the media query for what we're doing. And the menu here needs to be changed a little bit. So the UL on this section, we would write a media query for this too. So this is top right, bottom left, and let's see if we can see any other elements on this style that are, and it looks like the padding itself, see how it's smaller. There's zero margin. We'll hit this and make sure that it refreshes, and we're in good shape. But we want to make sure that the nav itself is, let me inspect it to get to that section. What I'm going to do right now is just make this an external console log, because I want to see the nav itself. And you see the height right here is 30 pixels, but the width is what we're concerned about. So the UL right here needs to have less padding on left and right. So what we can do is write a media query. This is one, and we're getting to the point where, at 400 it's going to be too much. So like the left padding here could be 0. So I'm playing with the padding on this section, and now you see it's still far too much. So let's go to the list item and make sure that that is not, see the margin right there? This is where our issue is. So we're going to go ahead and refresh. We'll empty cache and do a hard reload. And this is when we can bring this in. So our media query for nav li on this will be 25 pixels. So all I have to do now is go into my media query, do nav li margin, and I believe if memory serves me it was margin right, 25 pixels. So now I can refresh that, it's looking better. And now I can start working in this section here, and just the whole margin auto can be used right now for the wrapper. So the wrapper is like this, and you see a width. So I might take that margin wrapper and do a width of 400. So inside my media query I would descend down from the top level to the courses. So this is wrapper, oops, excuse me, class of wrapper, and we could do width colon 400 pixels. Oops, excuse me. And then we get that value. So you can write media queries for anything you're working with. Now I've got this, and now my wrapper is 400. Only in the media query though, which is great. And this is still working. It's just that now it's overridden because we are in media query mode. So right now I can do inspect on this section. This is H2, and I've got margins around it. So what I might do is change my margin to be top and bottom 0 and auto on the right and left. Now, if it's part of the H4 group or the article group, we just have to make sure that this gets centered based on what we know. Okay, so there's our contact, by the way. So there's definitely some CSS that covers the 4th navigation portion, or the 5th, the contact, and that would have to be fixed as well. Let's see if there's a 5th here. Marge left. Make sure it goes down. There we go. So 15 looks like it's a more appropriate media query for this. But that's what we do. We write media queries based on what we know about our CSS. Okay? And at this point, I'll stop the video here because it's 10 minutes, but we've got a better looking, more responsive section. It obviously needs to be touched up quite a bit. You see H1 here, the width, and that's this right here, which is that section. So that would need to be touched up. We'd need this to be centered and this stuff to be centered. But I've made it somewhat responsive, and now when I go to the different areas, I go to, let's just make sure that the popular recipes down here gets floated left. So this is the section courses, and section courses should not be float none, it should be float left. And we'll fix that up real quick so we get a final read on this. So all I did in this section, so this is the float left, as you can see, and the width can stay the same. Hit that, and now we've got that section. So now when we go try to be responsive, at this point it snaps into responsive mode. And let's say I wanted to do tablet, I could do tablet for that too. So that's how to do responsive design on an existing layout. The next thing I want to do is do an overview of the frameworks that allow you to go responsive and how you might proceed with a responsive layout from scratch.